Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where we discuss all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Today we have myself and Kendel on the podcast, and we're going to be rolling through a few articles, things that we share amongst ourselves and talk amongst ourselves as a team. And we pick out articles that we think might be valuable for other people to be following or paying attention to. So, Kendel, with that, I'll let you kick off the first topic.
Perfect. Yeah, I this one isn't specifically tourism related, but I just feel like it relates so much to the work we've done with a lot of our clients, and it obviously applies to anybody who has a job. So this is kind of a two for one. There was two pieces of research that came out of MIT last week. So one is that 95% of Gen AI pilots are failing. And then kind of part of that, or kind of building on that, is that this whole, shadow AI economy is also building up here. I think, when I read this article, what I really relate it to is like a personal trainer. Like, you know what I mean? You get a plan and you follow it for like 2 months and you lose weight and you're happy. And then your personal trainer goes away and then you just kind of like fall back to old habits. It's kind of, reading this article, it's really like people, they're running these pilots, but if you're not like fully invested, things aren't going to happen. So I know you had a chance to read the article as well. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. So I'll maybe to clarify, this is a study done, Project Nanda at MIT, and it's specifically looking at enterprise, so large enterprises and big companies, right? And yeah, I'm not surprised, honestly, that a lot of these AI pilot projects are failing, not because, and as this article points out, and as the study points out, not because the technology is bad, but it's a people issue, right? So, I think I'm a broken record on this podcast of saying AI adoption is a people and culture thing before it's a technology thing. And this is a perfect example of that. In fact, interestingly, I'm talking to a friend of mine who's not in tourism right now, and they got their enterprise size company, and they want to bring me in to talk to their leadership team because exactly this kind of experience. And I know I haven't talked to her much, but I know that they got something like 15,000 licenses to ChatGPT, last year or a year and a half ago, whenever it came out, and just rolled it out across the organization. And now they're like, oh, we're spending a lot of money, we're not getting a lot of value out of it. And it's like, okay, well, how did you deal with people and culture? How did you train people? Was it a top down approach versus a bottom up approach, right? Sort of like there's a lot of factors when it comes to AI adoption. And so the technology is, again, the last place people should be thinking when it comes to actually succeeding in this adoption.
Yeah, so I know that this is, the whole study was about these large enterprise models, but I don't think it's any surprise that this is kind of, we're seeing this across the board, even with the smaller organizations as well. How do you recommend that, DMOs or small tourism organizations kind of avoid being stuck in that pilot mode?
I mean, I think you need a roadmap and a plan of some kind, right? So, not to be self-serving, but this is what we do. We help organizations with sort of developing AI roadmaps, and again, has to start off with people and culture. So there's some AI literacy and some AI training that needs to happen. There's some understanding that needs to happen about sort of number one, how your employees feel about AI. How your leadership views AI and its role in the organization, discussion about responsible AI use policies and principles, and putting up some guardrails in terms of what people can and cannot do with AI, right? So there's a lot of that type of thing that needs to happen first, honestly, and just getting everybody on the same page. And then, from there, it's, if you do this properly, the pilots, while you can do sort of large sort of organization-wide projects, it's actually not a good place to start. Really, it's like, hey, you know what? How can I make you 5% more effective because we built a custom GPT for you, or because we helped you learn how to use Notebook LM? Like start simple, right? Don't look for some big slam dunk. Just do little things, little productivity gains. If you come up with 10 custom GPTs that each increase your productivity by 10%, well, that's a huge increase in productivity. And that's all of a sudden, and then it's also the other thing that organizations need to do is a lot of sharing, best practices, documenting, right? All of those things, right? So I think it really depends on how you start. And I think the starting point really is with your people. And then you can probably avoid a lot of these problems. And I should say, they did note in this article that Some large company pilots are finding success, and more and young startups, and this is we're seeing this all over the place. Smaller companies and young startups that are sort of building AI from the ground up or AI first are seeing huge success, right? So the other challenge with these enterprises and these large organizations is they're big and they're hard to turn around, right? They have a lot of legacy systems. They have a lot of sort of process, right? So they're big and they're hard to change, right? Whereas any smaller organization is way more nimble, has way more opportunities to be flexible, can do small tests, right? So I think the opportunity for small guys, new entrants is huge. And there's a huge opportunity for these smaller companies or organizations or DMOs to honestly leapfrog their larger competitors by just being nimble and smart.
Yeah, one of the things you said there just kind of hit me from this article as well. So where they're seeing some of that ROI happen is more on that kind of back office automation instead of like, the big flashy marketing deployments that are coming up. So just like you said, those things that can just help simplify the kind of the back end, the boring stuff is where they're seeing a huge amount of ROI happening there.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in on that on what we're doing, right? And so we're building a few automations all over the place, various different ways. So obviously we've gone through and did the custom GPT thing and built custom GPTs across the board, which have really helped a lot of in a lot of ways. But now we're actually starting to use Claude and Claude Code and some of those tools and some of the MCP, which are connectors that the Claude AI uses to connect to different apps and different online digital technologies. And just simple things like, for example, this Riverside podcast interview, rather than if we record this, then one from our team has to go in and grab that and sort of bring it into his AI, take a bunch of steps. Now that it's possible to connect Riverside to Claude using an MCP connector and just grab the transcript automatically when it's uploaded and come up with a first draft or do one or two things before. There's now ways, really simple ways, honestly, where you can automate just a couple tasks of just moving files around, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like a lot, but if you add, I don't know, if I think about all the files I'm moving around on a daily basis, it's got to be an hour a day of just moving files around. So, again, simple back office thing. And also, not only does it speed things up, but also it just sort of gets it done, right? If you can automate a process of if a recording drops over here and it can be moved over here and an AI can do something with it, that just actually moves the process forward without the human intervention, right? And it's just an administrative task, right?
Yeah, and we've talked about this before too, where this is where like the SOPs and really knowing your processes is super important because
Yeah.
without having that defined kind of workflow, it would have been harder to kind of identify where we can bring in these things.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
with these large organizations and any organization, it's like before jumping in, like you have to figure out where it's actually going to fit into your workflow and then adjusting your workflows, adjusting your processes to accommodate the new
Yeah. Yeah.
tasks coming in.
Exactly.
So, do you think I guess we have talked about this in the past podcast as well, but who should own the responsibility of moving from pilot to integration? Like, how do we kind of ensure that's moving forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, so I will just say that I think the CEO, the president, the senior leader of the organization should own AI adoption broadly. I think that's my personal opinion, and they should have a vested interest and sort of have eyes on what's going on. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily they should own individual projects or pilots. So, we advocate creating an AI council, maybe, finding your AI champions. It depends on the organization and how big you are, but there should be at least one person, and it doesn't necessarily have to be IT. In fact, probably shouldn't be IT. Maybe somebody working with IT, but it should be. If you think about piloting something in the marketing department, it probably should be somebody from marketing, right? And it should be somebody that one shows an interest and shows an aptitude in AI. People are raising their hands. They want to learn about this stuff. So give those people an opportunity. If you're creating an AI council, it really should be cross functional and cross level, right? So you don't want just senior leadership. You also don't want to just give it to your juniors and say, run with it, right? You need to sort of have the healthy mix. So yeah, it kind of depends on the organization. But I think that really subject matter experts should be the ones leading their own pilots for the most part, and or being involved at the strategic level if they're bigger organization-wide pilots, and maybe the multiple people are involved in sort of actually making it happen, right? So, but fundamentally, what's interesting about AI is, it's really at the individual worker level where the productivity opportunity enhancement opportunities exist. So it's the individuals who understand how they get a job done, and those are the people that are best suited to understand, to your point, in that standard operating process where the best opportunities for automation might be, or where the opportunities for AI to come in and enhance something might be, right? So, having those subject matter experts and the people closest to the actual execution of a task is critical, because otherwise you're going to just do something to them in terms of their workflow, and they're not going to be happy about it, and they're not going to like it because now they got to change. They had no input, they had no buy-in, they don't understand why, right? So kind of involving those people at the front end is a really good idea.
Yeah, and I guess just the last note on this one is about that second MIT study, the shadow economy. Like you said, this should be kind of like a top-down thing. I think people, from what we've seen, are really craving that guidance. They're craving those guardrails. So, I think we've seen it happen all over the place. People are using AI, especially when they don't have any leadership. They're using it. Everyone's using it
Yeah.
to some degree,
Yeah.
right? So, maybe just speak to that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a huge problem from the beginning, since AI came into existence, right? So, just for context, shadow AI use is really just workers using AI, whether they're allowed to or not, hiding their use. So that could look in many different ways. The most risky way to a company is, on their own personal mobile device or at home on their computer, and they're moving files from work to home or whatever because they're not allowed to use it at work. Those are very risky things. Those employees are taking data, private, proprietary data, private. They're taking sort of some data risks and some privacy risks, and now they're putting it onto unsecure devices and all those types of things. So it's a huge problem. And so, I mean, to me, this always the answer to this is responsible AI use policies and principles, guardrails in terms of what tools you can use, what tools you can't. And you and I, Kendall, we've been through enough AI adoption frameworks and intuition sprints with clients where you have conversations with somebody and they're like, yeah, I use this tool for this. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's not really something you should be doing. You should stop doing that, right? And like these things come up in the conversations we have with people. And, when we're talking to leadership, it's like, okay, the best example of this one personally bothers me a lot is transcript tools. People are using tools made by God knows who. You know what I mean? There's so much information being shared in these meetings. Meeting transcripts are being shared automatically with all participants. Like there's just a lot of risky behavior happening, and it's like nobody's like we need to put some guardrails on, right? So I mean, we're very big subscribers of if you're on Google, use your Google tool, meeting transcript tool. If you're on Zoom, use the native tool. That's what we believe. It's not to say other tools aren't good, but you should have some policies around this stuff, right? So generally speaking, if you give people some permissions, and permissions too are, I talked to my friend Eric who does marketing in the banking industry, which is very risk averse, and it's like the immediate sort of first step is no, nobody can use this. And then, Eric goes in and starts having conversations, and it's like, okay, well, how about here's an example use case. You're just looking for some information about, I don't know, mortgage rates or, you know what I mean? Just like basic information. It's like, yeah, that would be fine. That's safe, right? So you're not putting in any personal information. So then you peel back the onion a little bit and you start to understand that there are a lot of low risk, high value use cases that don't involve any personal information, any privacy leaks. There's no risk. So start defining those and give people a bit of a sandbox to play in, right? And that at least sort of starts to open up a conversation in your company about what are low risk, high value use cases, what are high risk, low value, you know what I mean, use cases, and you can start to create a bit of a matrix as to what's okay and what's not. And then I think people, when they understand why they can't do something, I think they're more willing to sort of accept those parameters. But if it's just a blanket, no, you can't use this because it's dangerous. It's just like, I'm going to use it anyways because it makes my job easier and it makes my job faster. And I don't care what you think, right? So unfortunately, and the other thing is every leader in the world needs to be having active conversations with their leadership team, with their staff, everything. This is not going away. So you need to start getting ahead of this.
Absolutely. Lots of communication and transparency. All right. Big story number 2, over tourism. So AI helped cause it. Now it might help fix it. So this one jumped out to me because people often ask you about environmental impacts of AI, and you often say that you believe AI might help fix them. So when I saw this one, I thought of you. And basically, cities like Kyoto and Barcelona are piloting some AI tools that are going to help predict and redirect visitor flows, few other things in there. So I really liked this because, again, it just reminded me of something that you would say. And I just think there's such a great opportunity here for, these really crowded tourism sites. So, how might a small DMO use a technology like this? Like, is there a way that the little guys can pilot something like this?
This is an interesting article here. So, just for context, this article was Japan Today. So, it was an article about over tourism in Japan. And, that it didn't really in this article say definitively that it thinks AI might solve the problem, but it sort of said it could. And it sort of was a bit. I thought it was an interesting article from the context of just sort of how they explained how technology evolution impacts tourism. So, they told a story about how when the train started going through and how all of a sudden everywhere the train stopped, tourism started to happen and things like that, right? So, kind of a good context for how technology impacts tourism, right? And then obviously things like, a TikTok video going viral and all of a sudden people are showing up at a beach somewhere because, TikTok blew up or whatever. So, it's a very interesting, sort of idea, sort of concept in general to just be paying attention to. But, I think there's a couple of things. I know I spoke to Jason at Kismet a few podcasts ago. We were talking about sort of kind of their technology for helping hotels sort of beat OTAs online. And so they have this interesting technology that they've built. And without getting too complicated about it, basically their technology sort of creates a vectorized database that allows, the sort of hotel to be more visible online. Very complicated technology. So but I think conceptually, actually, tourist DMOs. I think the idea of a DMO kind of getting into that game is interesting. I'm actually going to have a conversation with somebody out of the UK here next week about this because I think that first of all, there's a couple things. Is if AI could do a good job of tracking where there are large groups of people and sort of in real time kind of track, sort of where there's a lot of things happening, potentially that could redirect, just tourists who want to avoid that busyness. And then two, if you created this sort of almost like this kind of Kismet style sort of online sort of technology that can sort of basically take everything that's on the DMO website, all the attractions and accommodations in the destination, all those kinds of things, and sort of map it out. Help direct people in terms of if we know that there's an event happening and it's really busy over here, maybe the recommendations that come out of the DMO website recommend people go elsewhere, right? So I think I think it could be done. I think there's a lot of people kind of starting to explore this idea. And I think it's just a matter of, a DMO being willing to be innovative and trying something, right? So I know Kismet is interested in the idea of sort of partnering with a DMO. I spoke to actually Turismo yesterday, which is another BC based company that's doing some cool technology software. They're interested in sort of understanding how this could be done. So I think there's a lot of people sort of putting their heads together to figure out how we can use AI to kind of direct traffic differently. And it's really a matter of a good interested group of people willing to be innovative and try something to come together and try it, right? So I'm going to be pushing for it,
Mhm.
and I'm hoping we can sort of pilot something with one of the DMOs we work with.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think, I think we already kind of see this in some ways too. Like attractions and things have like smart ticketing and pricing, so you
Yeah.
pay more for peak times. I mean, that's kind of like an older way of doing it. But I'm just thinking like right now we do there's geofencing ads, right, where you can like target people ads when they're in a certain area. Like if there could be push notifications on people's phones if they're in a certain way or in a certain region that's overcrowded, and just letting them know like this area is crowded, come back at this time. There's definitely, I think, some really cool things that could happen. So
I think there's lots of ways. Like I think the technology is going to become a very dynamic two-way kind of channel, and it'll be able to sort of analyze what's going on in a destination and report back. Let's just say even let's just pick on ChatGPT. They used to have, I don't think they have anymore, this ability to like schedule tasks, right? But I can imagine in the future it's just like, hey, send me notifications about I'm going on vacation here. Send me notifications about what's going on, right? And so it's just a matter of connecting a little bit of data sources in together, and then being able to sort of push that information out to people. So I think this is almost inevitable that the technology will be able to help us do that. Whether it helps with over tourism or not, though, is hard to say. Because people go to certain places for a reason because usually they're the nicest, best places.
yeah,
It's a bit of a hard problem to solve.
yeah. I just to relate back to the article. I thought it was funny that it kind of, one of the ways that it was saying it could help was with tools like virtual reality and augmented reality, but light colored TVs, it related it to, it might just like make the desire to go even more. So, like you
Yeah.
said, it was pretty like ambiguous whether or not it actually thought it was going to solve it. But
Yeah.
like you're saying, I think there's so many fun ways, so many cool ways that AI can really help with over tourism. So, just a matter
Yeah.
of, like you said, some innovative partners and making some testing some things, right?
Exactly.
Okay, big story number 3 from TechCrunch. Meta's AI translations go global, English and Spanish first. So this came out a few days ago. Meta is going all in, and for tourism, I think this is so cool for like content creators, destinations, creating marketing content. Basically, built right into the platform is going to be the option to translate. Obviously, they're starting with Spanish and English, and it will even do like dubbing without having to pull into another tool at all. It's all happening like in app. So, multilingual marketing. So, what do you think? Let's just get your first reaction with this.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I'm sort of this. It's awesome, I think, in terms of we actually just had this conversation yesterday about this podcast, right, Kendall? So we're like, hey, we should, just dub it in Spanish or whatever, or sort of use AI to help turn it into a Spanish podcast to reach another, one third of the population or whatever, right? So, obviously from a tourism perspective, it's super exciting. I think that, to me, it's like this is going to be table stakes in a matter of 6 to 12 months. Every platform, every app, this is just going to be built into everything because it's easy. I think the tools can already do this well. We got Google Translate, so you could already do this fairly well on your website. So, the interesting part about it is you've been able to translate your website to multiple languages for years, but I don't think very many people are doing it, right? So, I think to me it's just sort of like it's time to get on this train. I think this opens up a lot of opportunities, opens up your destination, whatever your experience, to way more people, makes you way more accessible. So, why not, right? And I think that technology to me is just getting cheaper and cheaper to be able to do this, and it's becoming easier and easier to do it. So I think people should be all over this kind of stuff, but they haven't been to date, despite the fact that it's relatively similar technologies. I mean, Metas is cool because you could do things like my voice in Spanish looks like me talking. They move my lips differently so that it aligns with my words. So I mean, it's like totally next level kind of stuff. But I think the ability to translate things in real time is it's been and the other interesting thing about that is tourists already do this, right? So like there's apps you can have where you literally hold it over a menu and you can read it in your own language, things like that, right? So the tourists are already there. So I think the tourism industry needs to just step up and get there already as well.
Yeah, so you think this is going to be like a baseline expectation in a few months?
I just think that literally, I just feel like language is going to be gone as a barrier. Like I just think it'll be the AI. Every AI tool will just be able to translate into any language. Essentially, you'll be able to, I don't know, put an AI on top of a website and it'll translate into if the provider hasn't done it, you'll have a tool that'll be able to do it for you, right? So I just think personally, I think language is just it's low hanging fruit from where AI can help perspective.
And I guess yesterday when we were talking, we were like, there's a little bit of risk involved here, right? If you don't have someone on your team or like someone who
Yeah.
can like vet the content, right? Like, how do you preserve that nuance and cultural tone and ensure that
Yeah.
it's done
So there's
well?
definitely risk here. I mean, I think that this comes down to disclosure and transparency. And hey, listen, this was translated into Spanish using AI tools. It may not be 100% accurate or culturally whatever. I think that's on the easy side. I think if you just do that, hey, you know what? If I'm a Spanish speaker, now I'm able to read something or access something that I wasn't able to before. Okay, that's great. It's a win. If you're a little more risk averse, then you might want to make sure we have one on our team, so we'll probably have him listen to a podcast first and give us an assessment on, right? So have somebody who's like a native speaker of the language sort of do a small pilots and assess them. But I think personally those risks are relatively small. And if you're just disclosing and again, disclose it in a way in a very positive spin, right? Hey, this has been translated using Meta AI to make it more accessible to Spanish speaking audiences. Okay, who's going to get mad at that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this should probably really level the playing field for some smaller destinations or just people without budget. It's going to be pretty
Yeah.
cool to see. Maybe our next
You know
podcast.
what I'll say to this, Kendall, and this is speaking to my English North American audience, is that like, we've probably been lazy about this because everybody is sort of forced to speak our language. But the risk to us is all of a sudden now Spanish speaking languages can easily translate everything to English and to European languages, and and so the global competition for tourism might get very intense because all of a sudden, competitors that have less resources now all of a sudden can do these things, and they're going to have a vested interest in getting ahead of this faster than us kind of lazy English people that just expect everybody to speak our language. So, you know, so
Oh
step
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Step up. Love it. Okay, we're gonna head into some rapid fire round with some headlines. You just actually alluded to this, but this headline is direct booking revolution is heating up. So this one is all about OTA commissions and really, Meta AI and Google Hotel Ads have partnered up. There's a surge in direct bookings. I was reading part of this article that was saying people on Airbnb now are actually like putting in what their property is called so people can just Google it and book direct outside of Airbnb. So I think this is like a really cool thing, but what do you think?
What I'll say is that I see a lot of activity around this sort of challenge the OTA narrative. It's been around for a long time. Obviously, everybody's trying to figure out a way to get around these OTAs, but I think that there's never been a time more ripe for disruption in this industry. And so, yeah, I'm excited about this. I think this is a sort of a 8 out of 10 type of thing on the hype meter, but it's I think hotels and destinations and it's sort of an opportunity right now. The whole playbook is being rewritten. All business rules are being rewritten because of AI. And I think there's an opportunity to sort of try to take back some of the authority that the OTAs have taken away from the tourism industry. So how it's going to end up, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of pretty smart people like working on this problem and trying to solve it. So, and there's a lot of money. Like at the end of the day, there's a lot of money to solve this problem, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about billions of dollars. People are going to try their damnedest to get there. And I personally have a small interest in sort of figuring out how to do this as well on the destination level, as opposed to me, I have this concept and this vision of the destination being like a social enterprise where they play the role of the OTA, but for much lower fees. And, that sort of supports the destination through some of the fees, right? That can kind of help to support the destination so they can be less reliant on government. And really it could play a social enterprise role because also if the destination is sort of playing this role, back to the over tourism story, if they have the data and they know where it's really busy and where it's not, there might be some ability then dynamically to also kind of direct people into the different directions. So for me personally, the concept of a destination getting into this game and solving this problem on behalf of all of their members, it's sort of a multi benefit opportunity that I see for that's my pitch to destinations out there. Let's make this happen.
All right, 8 out of 10. Okay, next one is Saudi Arabia doubles down on smart tourism. So they have this goal. It's Vision 2030, and they actually want to attract 150 million annual visitors by 2030. This will increase their tourism GDP contribution from 3% to 10%. So this to me is kind of funny because we were just talking about over tourism, and they are actually using AI to like help draw more tourism. So they're doing this by using like AI powered trip planning, biometric immigration systems, which we talked about last week with Africa. So they are going all in to increase their tourism. Hype meter?
Yeah, I mean, I think I give Saudi Arabia just generally a 10 out of 10 on tourism hype meter because, Saudi Arabia is a very interesting country because they are obviously the way they're structured, sort of politically. They have a lot more authority to just get things done. They also are sort of geopolitically kind of interestingly sort of situated in terms of in the AI arms race. I mean, between the United States and China. So they're sort of they're kind of a hub of a lot of things and in the middle of a lot of sort of places and conversations. And they could just do whatever they want, their government, and they can spend billions of dollars because they're very rich. So they have every ingredient to like be absolute leaders in this field, and they have been. They've already been, sort of leading. They had an AI powered chatbot that they were one of the first in the world to sort of lead with, and I could just expect more and more innovation coming out of Saudi Arabia around tourism. They see obviously tourism as a huge economic driver for their economy, and they have no real limits in terms of testing and trying things and innovating and access to chips and all kinds of things. So I actually see that like I see a lot of innovation coming out of Saudi Arabia that probably I see the rest of the world following. So my advice to everybody in tourism is pay close attention to what Saudi Arabia is doing. And even if you can do a fraction of what they're doing or little pilots similar to what they're doing, worthwhile. They're sort of at the leading edge, and I think they're going to be there permanently. Personally,
That'll be one to watch.
yeah.
Okay, another one out of Forbes. This is really just building on what we talked about here. So, AI's personal touch in travel. So, really, it's talking about how the travel industry is just under this profound metamorphosis, and AI is at the forefront of the evolution. So, really taking on everything from the booking process, handling flight searches, hotel reservations, baggage tracking. It's just, travel tourism is an industry in which AI is really changing in a fast way, in an impactful way. So I don't know if this is really like a hype worthy headline, but it's still just awesome to hear.
Yeah.
This is news.
I mean, I'll sort of pick on this author a little bit and criticize him a little bit because I'm gonna give this like a 5 out of 10 on the hype meter because just the way I've kind of like asked ChatGPT many times about like tell me all the ways that AI is gonna improve tourism and travel, and it's like literally this sounds like one of the just spit out answers from ChatGPT. So it's sort of as a yeah, yeah, absolutely, all these things are gonna happen, but like where are the examples, how, who's doing it? It sort of to me was a little thin. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that you hear about a lot of this kind of stuff, a lot of the travel tech, companies, all the companies that are sort of involved in various different aspects of tourism are all kind of talking about this and baking this in personalization into their technologies, right? Hotel booking engines and things like that, right? So they're all kind of talking about it. They're all doing it, but the sort of to me, this is a little bit great, but sort of like where are the case studies, where are the examples? I don't know, right? So I think it is happening more and more, and I think it's going to happen more and more. Again, like what's interesting about tourism, especially when you think about the travel part of tourism, so like the like going on an airplane, booking a hotel, going to the hotel, all those types of things. Like there's a lot of data involved in all of that, right? So there's a lot of opportunities for personalization just because of the amount, just sheer amount of data that's sort of involved in the whole experience from beginning to end, right? Like airlines have a ton of data, right? All transportation companies have a ton of data that they're sitting on, right? Hotels have a ton of data in terms of preferences and things like that. So, it's leveraging that data just to give you a better experience. So, yeah, I expect that we're all going to have like this like personal AI assistant that knows us really well and knows everything we like to do and knows how we like to travel and right, and then it'll just become our sort of personal concierge. That's how I see things rolling out. And the better that the hotels and the DMOs and the operators and everybody are at sort of making their offering sort of visible to these AI tools, the more it'll be able to personalize and sort of recommend those trips to. We just came back from Washington and we used ChatGPT to plan our whole trip, right? And we just put in, here's what we like to do. Here's the types of things, experiences we're looking for. Here's the kind of place we want to stay in. And it gave us an entire itinerary based on our preferences. And then, maybe next time it's like, hey, we're going on another trip and it remembers all those preferences, right? So it can just, continue to learn you and get to know you better and then hyper personalize to you as you go.
I think that's the part I'm most excited about with AI in travel is like the opportunities for personalization. Yeah, very
Yeah.
great. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one is not really tourism related, but it caught my eye. So Claude can now de-escalate harmful conversations. So when someone gets in a very toxic exchange with Claude, it can end the conversation. So as far
Yeah.
as I know, they're the first platform to be able to do this. Yeah, let's hear your commentary.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds interesting, but to me, this is like a 3 out of 10. I think what they're trying to do is just sort of take some of, as everybody knows, OpenAI released ChatGPT 5, and as part of that release, Sam Altman was talking about the dangerous relationships some people have with their AI models and all this kind of stuff. And I think Anthropic's just trying to sort of jump on that news and come up with some kind of hey, we did something to solve this problem. I don't know. To me, there's a lot of the language in here that's kind of um, not helpful. Anthropic has announced new capabilities that allow some of its newest, largest models to end conversations in what the company describes as rare, extreme cases of persistent, harmful abusive user interactions. Strikingly, Anthropic says it's doing this not to protect the human user, but rather the AI model. And then it says to be clear, the company isn't claiming that AI models are sentient or can be harmed by their conversations with users. In its own words, Anthropic remains highly uncertain about the potential moral status of Claude and other large language models now into the future. So for me, if it's like on the one hand, you're saying we don't believe that there's a moral status or that they are sentient or that they feel harm, then why are you using those words? Like to me, are you just trying to get media attention? It sounds to me like they might be because I don't know. To me, this actually bothered me, this whole article,
Yeah.
because they're like, I think the word is amanthropomorphizing or something. I forget. There's a name where it's like making the AI seem more human. I forget the word. anyways.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're kind of like doing that just to sort of get some headlines. I could be wrong, but that's how it kind of felt to me. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's great. So, there was a case with a company called Character AI where a kid committed suicide because he fell in love with his character. It was a teenager. There was in that court case, there was a lot of interesting kind of evidence that was put into the court, and it was sort of talking about, the AI was actually kind of almost like encouraging the kid, or the kid felt almost encouraged. And there's certainly, there was like, wow, that is very dangerous behavior. And absolutely, there should have been stops in place. So for me, the concept of having stops in place is absolutely a great idea. And I'm glad that, at least they're doing this at Claude. But the way they're kind of describing it is sort of, to me, is just clickbait. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like done for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, or they're just sort of they're using language that's sort of trying to suggest something that I don't think they should be. I think it's kind of dangerous. They're almost like feeding the narrative of these things are human and they're sentient, or they have feelings, or they feel like they could do harm if you're saying something to them that's offensive or whatever. It's like it's not how these things work. So like, why are we making it seem that way, right? But I guess again, the ability to end conversations. It'll be interesting to see, to me, when the examples of ended conversations come up, and
Yeah.
what got ended and what didn't. You know what I mean? So like when the rubber hits the road, I'd be curious to see how this all plays out. So we'll stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I'm glad I had a three in there. I'm kind of happy that you gave that one a three because I was worried these were all going to be, high level. So good to have a
All
mix.
tens, all tens.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we got. All we got this time. So, get your strategy in place and have a plan. They're not just a shiny tool, but definitely contact us. Like help. We can help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're looking for help on responsible AI's policies and principles, I mean, we have a whole methodology for producing them. So I would recommend you go through that methodology. However, in the absence of that, if you go to the footer of our website, tourismainetwork.com, we just updated our responsible AI's policies. They're pretty robust on there. So those could give you a good starting point, for free to start actually thinking about them. But again, I recommend going through a process so that they're actually meaningful to your organization and your employees. If you and your employees and your organization create your responsible AI use policies together, then you'll own them together and you'll follow them together, right? So just sort of slapping on somebody else's policies and saying you're done is not quite good enough.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Till next time.